So let's start with the presentation. So I prepared a couple of slides, but I'll jump into some live demos in between whenever there's something I would like to show you. So what am I going to talk about today? So I think the most important aspect of securityManager, of course, is its authorization features. How is securityManager able to protect ArcGIS for server? How is it able to protect OGC services? And how can we protect anything else? How can we protect, let's say, web resources, web sites, and something like that? And how can we integrate into SSO systems and something like that? Then, of course, there is no access control without a user management. So you can only assign rights and give permissions to users which are authenticated, which you already know. securityManager therefore provides also user management, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It has an internal user management system, but it's also able to connect to Active Directories and LDAPs and something like that. So I'll talk about that briefly. And I'd like to close with the topic of single sign-on. So securityManager provides an own single sign-on mechanism based on domain cookies, but it's also capable of integrate with other SSO implementations and with federations and something like that based on the SAML2 standard. Yeah. And this is what I'll be closing with today. So let's start with ArcGIS for server, maybe for many of you probably the most interesting topic. So what are we doing when protecting ArcGIS for server? So let's say the specialty of ArcGIS for server compared to, let's say, standard OGC services like a WMS or WFS or so is that you can, let's say, explore the ArcGIS catalog by the base URL and find folders and services within there. So you have one URL to an ArcGIS for server, but this is not necessarily one service only. That can be a lot of different services within different folders. So first thing you have to do is you have to authorize the catalog view. So when people are trying to access your ArcGIS for server and try to investigate which services are in there, and you want to apply access control, then of course you might want to, let's say, prevent people from seeing services they are not authorized to use. So first thing is you have to define what people, which services and which folders people can see when accessing your ArcGIS. And if this is done, the next thing will be you have to authorize the services individually. So you have map service in there, you have feature service in there, whatever ArcGIS is providing. Of course, you also have to create access rights to your individual services. In the use case I'm going to show, there will be a map server, and well, we will have two users, an administrator user which can see everything, can also see all services and folders provided by that ArcGIS for server. And we have a standard user which can only see a subset of services and folders and which can access a certain map server, but also with a restriction on features within that map server. So when doing this, what is the standard workflow in securityManager? First thing is you have to register your ArcGIS endpoint in securityManager. Of course, securityManager has to be aware that there's a service which it has to protect. And this is done based on the SOAP URL of ArcGIS. Then you can select different authentication methods. securityManager provides different ways to authenticate, just to reflect different client capabilities of providing authentication. So you might have ArcGIS desktop, which can make use of HTTP basic authentication. You might have an application using an ArcGIS REST API or whatever, which might make use of the domain cookie mechanism, and so on and so on. And we also provide something like a guest access, which doesn't require any kind of authentication, but then you're automatically mapped to a special role, to a guest role, and you can also assign permissions to these guest users, so you can also assign permissions to anonymous login. Yeah, so when you've registered your server and selected the authentication methods, first thing is you have to create the policy sets for the individual services. So the policy sets are containers where you put in the individual policies for your different roles. So each service has one policy set, and this policy set can contain different policies reflecting different access rights for different users. You would probably start with the catalog policy, as I said, to define the accessibility of services and folders in the catalog view, and then you probably would continue with creating policies for the other services. So I'd like to show that quickly. So this is securityManager 4.1, which you're seeing right here. So don't be confused by that license manager logo up there. As many of you already know, there is another product, License Manager. This is tightly coupled to securityManager, and in our demo environment, that's always the bundled version of both products. But everything I'll show today will be securityManager only. It doesn't depend on License Manager. So let me log in. And then you see different tabs up here, and we start with the Protected Services tab. As I said before, first thing you have to do is register services and make them known to securityManager. And there will be a special one which I'm going to look at today, which is, let me look for it, the SDI Suite Demo Portal ArcGIS server. So this is already registered. I don't have to do it again. But if you register a new service, then you just have to fill in the URL to that service, so how securityManager can access that service. Select the type. So in this case, it's an ArcGIS server. And you always can activate or deactivate it. And what you're seeing here are the different authentication methods. And you just have to check the boxes for those you want to provide or support for this service you're protecting right here. Something which is new with 4.1 in securityManager, we talked about that already in the last webinar, is that you're now also able to authenticate against ArcGIS. So if you have an ArcGIS for server which is already protected with HTTP basic or token security, then you can provide a login here, which is used by securityManager when accessing that ArcGIS for server. Well, as I said, first thing you have to do after registering this ArcGIS server right here is go to policies and create policy sets for your ArcGIS for server. Therefore, you go into policies, ArcGIS server, and select the one you are going to create these policy sets. In this case, when you request the ArcGIS server, it is explored. So these are the different folders and services which are provided by it, and because it was already there before, couple of services are already checked, and for those services we already have a policy set. But let me look for a special one. For this one, I'll show I'll use this service afterwards for the demo, and therefore I create a new policy set for this one. I do it, and now go to map server, and now we have a new empty policy set in here. This is the one which is just created, and well, next thing would be request the resources from this map server, so request the layers and so on, and there you have the policy set. But as I said, first thing we would like to do is go to a catalog server and define visibility for that catalog server. So far we only have a policy in here which is called grant all, so everybody can see everything, but that's not what we want. So we just want to let the administrator see everything, and therefore we select the Security Manager Administrator role in here, and Security Manager Administrator is still able to explore all resources and to perform everything on the catalog. So save this one. But now we want to have, let's say, a second policy in here, which is for standard users. So we choose the standard user role, and we restrict it to certain sub-resources. So we need the folder common, we need this map server in there. We can choose some other stuff in there as well. So some other map servers out of common. Let's say we take the folder SDI suite as well, but only with one server in there. Whatever you want, save the policy, and that's it. So that's what we have done now. We have created a policy for the catalog server, and if I now try to access this service as an administrator, you see I'm using the SSO URL, and because I'm already logged in here in Security Manager, I'm also logged in via SSO for the server itself. So you can see 5 different folders in here. So if I log out here, this is already, let's say, a preview of the SSO demo, which I'm going to show afterwards. So now I'm logged out, try to access it. First thing which is done, I'm redirected to the login page. Now I log in as a standard user. And what you can see is there are less folders in there. It's only the common folder and the SDI suite folder. If I look into the common folder, there are the 3 map servers I authorized. If I look into the SDI suite folder, there's only 1 map server. So going back here, I'm trying to access the map server. I can access it because it's here, but I can't request anything from there because there's no policy for that service so far. We just created the policy set for this one, but we haven't yet created policies which allow me to do anything there. So I have to log out again and log in as an administrator. Oops, I think I mistyped. So now I go to the policy set I just created. Map server, take this one. You see no policies here, nobody can access the service so far. It's just shown in the catalog view, but nobody can make use of it. So again, we have something like admin may see everything. So you could restrict it to resources, you could restrict it to certain actions, but as it's the administrator, I just leave it as it is, and I create a new one for the user. User role, also all resources. Well, with these few resources there's no need, doesn't make sense to restrict it. I could restrict actions. For instance, I could prevent users from doing identifies or something like that, which I don't do right now. But what I'm doing is I create an obligation, which is a definition query filter. So The features which are in there are, let's say, agricultural areas, and they have an owner attribute. And I'm filtering on a certain owner, so just to prevent the user from seeing, let's say, features which have a different owner. So I have to select the layer ID, which is 0 in here. I have to put in the filter query or the filter statement in here. Besitzer is the German word for owner, so I'm filtering on this attribute with this obligation. So now it's in here. Save the policy. That's it. Okay, let's go back here. I'm still logged in as an administrator, therefore I'm doing a refresh on this URL, and I should be able to see it because now I created the policy, and I'm also able to do a preview, let's say, in the JavaScript viewer. So these are all areas provided. The different colors represent different owners, and again, if I log out here, if I do a refresh, I'm not logged in, so I log in as a user. Start this one again. Wow, and probably mistyped the filter statement for whatever reason. But we can have a look at that, let's say, in a predefined application, which is something like this. So if we look at that from another demo server, which is the same demo but just on another instance, which is probably created correctly, then we have a certain user which is able to see only the restricted subset. So this is the Map Apps application, by the way, which is now starting and which will then show the services I've shown before. So there it is. So here you see everything. If I log off and well, what was the trying to remember the login for the user which is able to see everything. I hope this has failed. So try this one. Yeah, and this one is able to see everything. So this is the same service. I started the same application. In one case it's filtered to a certain attribute, and in the other case it is not. And just be aware, this is all the same layer. You're just excluding certain features from being visualized in this layer. So this is not layer security, this is definitely feature security, what you're seeing here. Okay, so far for ArcGIS. Oops. Let's go back to the presentation. Next topic would be how to protect OGC services. This is quite similar, but a little bit easier because, as I said before, an OGC services only has one service behind a certain URL. So there is nothing to explore. There's no catalog or something like that which you can explore. There are not different service types behind that. This is just one single WMS or WFS or whatever you want to make use of. The workflow is pretty similar, just excluding the steps of authorizing the catalog view and creating policy sets for the different sub-services. It's just register the service, create a policy set for it, create the policies, and you're done. So this is quite a quick workflow which you have to do. So in this example, I'm going to show a WMS of one of our customers from the federal state of Brandenburg in Germany, and we'll create a policy where a user may see all layers, but with a spatial restriction in there, and with a guest access and allowing the guest to see well, only a subset of the layers. So there are some transportation layers in there which won't be visible. So going back here, closing all these, and logging in. I'm still as a user, so logging in as an administrator again. Go to Protected Services, and now I'm creating a new one. So this is Brandenburg DNM, that's how it's called. It's a WMS. Let me just copy the URL. This one. And I select the different authentication methods. So for this demo I'll need HTTP basic, so therefore this is the box I have to check, and the guest access. I just leave the rest as it is. So save this one, and now the service is there. And for creating the policy set for the service, you have a button right here which allows you to jump directly into the policies. Create a policy set for that Brandenburg service. Next thing is create the layers. So these are the layers of the WMS. And now I create my policy. So first thing is select the user. I don't restrict the resources, so you are able to see all the layers. I don't restrict the actions, but I provide a spatial obligation in there. For spatial obligations, we refer to a WFS server, and the WFS server is providing geometries. And by selecting geometries from that WFS, we are enforcing the spatial restrictions in here. So in this case, we have feature type, which is Kreise, which is counties in Germany. We are searching in an attribute Landname, which is the name of the federal state. So I'll type in Brandenburg. And what I want to get displayed is the Kreisname, which is the name of the county. So I search for it, and now I get all counties of Brandenburg. And now I can select one or two, and let's take Potsdam, that's the capital, and Brandenburg-Havel, for instance. So I've selected two of these geometries, and these are now used for the spatial restriction. I can define, let's say, buffers around it. I have a selection which is only, let's say, useful when you have something like WFS, where you can define what happens to features which are intersecting your spatial or your area which you have allowed. So in this case, you permit intersecting features. In this case, you only permit features which are completely within. For WMS, this is not relevant. And you can define whether you want to allow transformations of the spatial reference system. Okay, I do that and save the policy. And I've chosen a bad name for it, but anyway, create a new one for the guest role in this case. Guest. And restrict resources, so everything with traffic. So this is road names, leave it out, transportation ways, leave it out, and transportation objects, leave it out as well. And what we could add, for instance, is something like a copyright obligation. We could use, let's say, just a second, need a logo. The URL of the image, put it in here, save it. Okay, and save the policy. This time I'm going to show that in ArcGIS desktop. Again, I have to search for the service, take the HTTP basic URL and add it as a new service to ArcMap. So add a WMS, request the layers, and what happens, I'm forced to log in. So I log in as a user. Then I can see all the layers and can add it to the map or to the map area in here. And what you see here, well, it's a bad spatial reference system probably, but you see the two counties which I selected, so they are displayed in here. So this is the spatial restriction for the standard user. Now I close this one again, and now I take the guest URL. As said, using the guest URL doesn't require to log in, but you can also define certain restrictions to that guest. So as you see, when I click on request layers, I'm not forced to log in anymore, but what you also see is that the list of layers is smaller than before. So I take this one again, add it to the map. So you see, this is, let's say, full coverage. There is no spatial restriction in here, but if I switch to the other one, or just make it the other way around, then you can see all roads and something like that. So all traffic layers and here in the area of this restricted, and they are just excluded from here. You also see it when I display the layer list in here. It's just shorter. And you see the image in here. Unfortunately, it doesn't provide transparency, but the copyright is always rendered into the map image, which can be a, let's say, an image, as I used here, just by providing the URL to the image, or it can also be a text, and then you can type the text directly into the copyright obligation. Okay, this was the WMS demo, and I said, well, you can protect ArcGIS, you can protect ODC services, and you basically can also protect anything else. So we have a generic URL protection in securityManager, and this is able to control access to any web resources. Web resources can be files like zip archives or PDFs or something like that, but also web folders. So if you have a certain web folder where you provide, let's say, a bunch of PDFs or something like that, which you want to control, you can also define access rights for certain web folders and subfolders and something like that. And also, let's say the basic intention of creating that URL access was protecting unspecified services. So if you have a certain service which is not covered by securityManager so far, so where securityManager doesn't provide the fine-grained access control as it provides for the services I just showed you, at least you have something like a yes-no decision for a certain service. So you can also put service URLs behind that. And just to mention that, because as you have seen, you are not using the original service URL when you access protected services. You always access a securityManager URL, which is forwarded then by securityManager to the service in the backend. And that requires also that you have something like URL replacement and capabilities, for instance, and something like that. And also the generic URL protection provides URL replacement in any XML or text document. So this ensures that also, well, any other services usually run quite smoothly with it. But please note, this is not intended for protecting websites. So there's no support for cookies in there. So cookies won't be forwarded by securityManager. There is a problem with linked content, so if you have images in there which are properly linked to somewhere else and maybe linked to folders which are not authorized, you might run into problems and something like that. So this is complicated. I know that some of you already try to use it for web applications or for websites, but this is not intended for websites, and usually it works badly with it. If you have the requirement of protecting websites, then you can use securityManager's domain cookie SSO mechanism directly, at least as long as you have a Java-based implementation in there, by just using certain servlet filters which are provided together with securityManager, which allow you to either force users to log in, and also which are able to provide authorization. So this is something you can just configure into your web application, so configure a servlet filter, and this can make use of the securityManager domain cookie mechanism. So whenever you have the need of protecting a web page or website, don't use the URL mechanism, use the securityManager SSO mechanism. Or you can also use and when you did that, then you can use this SSO mechanism also via that SAML2 web browser profile. I'll go into a bit more detail about SAML2 later on. So just for a quick demo, I'll try to protect something like PDF. So just let's take something like the securityManager system requirements, for instance. So I take this URL, go to Protected Services, create a new one, select URL right here, put the URL in there, and save it, and create a policy set which gives access, for instance, to an administrator or something like that. So you see, by using this, you can also create something like sub-URLs and something and so on, but this is not really necessary. So I create an access right for securityManager administrator, which can make use of this this policy and can then access this PDF, and all others can't. So take this one, let's take the HTTP basic URL. Oh, yeah, because I'm logged in already. So let's take another browser, take this one. Put in the URL, and you see I'm forced to log in. And here you go, here's the PDF. And if I provide a different login, so I think you can imagine, I don't have to show it again. So with a different login, you wouldn't get access to this one. So this is a very easy way to protect access to these kinds of resources. So let's get back to the presentation. That's it for the authorization stuff, and I think we're already running out of time a little bit. Talking a little bit about the user management. So, as I said, securityManager has a built-in user management, which makes use of a database. It provides a role concept, as you have seen already in the demos. I haven't shown the user management in the demo, but when you have the users in your user management, you can assign different roles to your users, and by assigning policies to certain roles, you get the link between a certain user which logs in and the policies which will be used for this user. So you have the role as something which is bound to users and which also represents the policies which are assigned to that user. The user management allows certain self-management capabilities, so it provides something like self-registration for new users. In this case, they are automatically assigned to a system role, which is a new user, so you can also create policies for users which registered by themselves but which aren't verified by whatever process. That makes use also of an email verification process, so users are only activated when they provide a valid email address, so then they get an email with an activation link, and when clicking on that activation link, the users are activated. And if they don't click within a certain amount of time, I think a couple of days or so, the users will be deleted automatically, just to prevent your user management from being spammed or something like that. It provides capabilities for users to change the passwords, to recover their passwords if they have forgotten, so this is also a 4.1 feature, and to maintain their user data, so change their addresses and something like that. And it also has something like a multi-tenant capability, so it's always a bit difficult to explain that for me in English. So in German we would call it Mandantenfähigkeit. In English it's just that it provides a group administration concept, so for each user group you can assign group administrators, and they can manage the users of their own group. They can register own services, they can manage policies for their own services, and of course visibility is only restricted to the group scope. So if you are a group administrator, you only see your own resources and your own users, and of course not resources and users from other groups, while the overall securityManager administrator of course can see everything. And we also have support for Active Directory and for LDAP. In this case, securityManager works in a read-only mode, so it only uses the user information from the LDAP, but you can't manage it by securityManager. You have to maintain your users with your usual Active Directory or LDAP functionality and management clients. For user attributes and roles and groups and something like that, there is, securityManager provides mapping functionality. So for instance, you can map all users of a certain subnode within an LDAP or an Active Directory to a certain role, or you can also map certain Active Directory or LDAP attributes to securityManager attributes. It's a little bit small in that image right here, but for instance, there is an LDAP which provides an attribute like given name, and you map it to first name in securityManager. There's a mail attribute in the LDAP, and you map it to email in securityManager. There's an SN, which is last name in securityManager. ST means city, and so on and so on and so on. So this is how you map the different attributes, and with roles and groups and so on, this is the same. And so you can quite easily map your Active Directory users to the attributes and roles which are required by securityManager. Yeah. Last topic is single sign-on. I already said single sign-on is based on domain cookies. This can be spread over different servers within one domain, as domain cookie says. That cookie is always valid for all services and servers within a certain domain. The login works with browser redirects. You have seen that before when I showed you the HTML view of the ArcGIS catalog. When I logged out in securityManager, I was also logged out for the catalog view, and when I then refreshed the URL, I was first redirected to the login page, and afterwards, after successful login, I was again redirected to the URL I requested initially. But then the cookie was set, and then I'm authenticated. The good thing about that is that browsers send their cookies automatically with our request, at least with our request to this certain domain. And that means, well, authentication runs automatically for everything which is using a browser, for instance, the Esri REST viewers or map apps or anything else. As you've seen, I can even access the service catalog directly from the browser just by typing the URL, and yeah, and then I'm authenticated because the cookie is just submitted. So there's no, let's say, need for additional integration work with these REST viewers and something like that. And as I said, it can also be used for authenticating other web applications by making use of that servlet filter which we are shipping together with securityManager. So you can just apply that servlet filter for any web application you are running, and it automatically provides the logic to evaluate the domain cookie and to do the authorization and something like that. So we have, as I said, an example documentation for that. When you want to integrate that, there is material which you can use. I think I skipped the demo because you have seen the SSO stuff already, and just close with a couple of remarks to SAML 2. So SAML 2 is a standard which supports, I think, couple of different functionalities. So it provides something like cross-domain single sign-on. So if you don't have just one domain but different ones, then you can make use of SAML 2 just to rewrite cookies from domain A to domain B, and just to bridge these two SSO domains. You can also set up federations. I'll have a slide afterwards which I just give you an idea what I mean with federations. And SAML 2 also is able to bridge different SSO implementations. For instance, if you use something like securityManager together with an SAP system, for instance, so SAP also provides SAML 2. Of course, the single sign-on technology in SAP is completely different to the one we are using in securityManager, but SAML 2 provides capability just to somehow convey the user information from one single sign-on application such as securityManager to another one such as SAP, for instance. So although the technology of the single sign-on implementation is completely different, SAML 2 allows to bridge these two SSO implementations. Yeah, and it provides single sign-on within a federation, so across domains. It provides, or it supports multiple identity providers, so you can have different instances where you can maintain users, also within different organizations, for instance. But in such a federation, it's sufficient to just have one user account at any of those identity providers to be able to be authenticated within the whole federation. And if you're using Active Directory, for instance, Microsoft also provides an extension for an Active Directory, which is called Active Directory Federation Services. So you can also make use of an Active Directory directly as an identity provider in the SAML 2 federation, which has some nice effects, such as you can use your Windows login for authenticating to securityManager, for instance. So if you take the user identities from your Active Directory, then you can just request securityManager, and you don't have to log in anywhere. You're just logged in because you are logged into your domain by your local machine. so to your Windows domain. This is possible by using Active Directory or ADFS. So as I said, federations basically consist of different organizations, and there is a trust relationship between these organizations. Within SAML2 there are two different roles which an organization can have. This is the role of a service provider, so providing service endpoints which you can use, and there's the other role of an identity provider, so managing users in a certain user repository and authenticating users. So organizations can take both roles or just one role. So you see here there's an organization which provides services and also manages users. Organization B is the same. Organization C only has services but has no own users which are within that federation. And organization D has no services but is an identity provider. And now no matter which user you are, if you're maintained here or here or here, you can access any resource within that federation. At least you're authenticated for any resource. Of course, these resources would be able to do their own access control, but if this user tries to access this service, at least this service knows who that user is without the need of maintaining it in the same system. So if this user tries to access this service, it's redirected to log in here. It's coming back with this SAML2 ticket somehow, and therefore this service provider recognizes, oh, this is a user of organization B, maybe also with certain user attributes, and based on the user attributes which are provided by that authentication in organization B, I can do my access decision right here. I can say, okay, I give access to all users from organization B, but only to users from organization A which have a certain attribute, I don't know, something like that is possible. So you can have different organizations, but you only need one user account somewhere in the federation to be recognized and authenticated. And that should be it for today. Thank you for your patience. So that was a bit longer than I expected, but that was a quick wrap-up of the basic functionalities of Security Manager, and I guess there are a couple of questions out there.